Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz saxophonist Tom Wright. We caught up with him about his latest 2020 CD with the Cat and Mouse Quartet, Notes from the Journey. Along with the music, he is a math professor and an avid traveler who lives in Spartanburg, South Carolina. We talked to him in late March 2020 as the COVID-19 quarantine was really heating up and got some interesting takes on his life and music and this new jazz world. Dig it.
How you holding up?
It's going, everybody's holding up a little weird now, but, it's how it goes.
Yeah, life in America today.
That's right, yeah.
For sure. Well, hey, thanks for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz. I appreciate it.
Oh, of course. Happy to do so.
So let's talk about this latest CD with the Cat and Mouse Quartet called Notes from the Journey.
Sure.
Give me an idea. What was your vision with this project?
I kind of wanted it to be like a trip around the world. It starts at the airport with a tune I wrote called Atlanta Bread, because I always fly to the Atlanta airport. And then it kind of hits a bunch of different places around the world. And then the second to last tune is the re-arrival at the airport, and the last tune is kind of a reflection afterwards, where you're kind of thinking back to what you saw around the world and how it's changed you, and yet everything around you is still the same. So that was kind of the overarching idea.
So you're a saxophonist, a composer, and a math professor, and you travel a lot. Tell me how all that comes together to create your creative id.
Oh gosh, it's interesting. It comes together in a lot of different ways because it hits a lot of different parts of my personality. The math thing is kind of when you do research math, it's kind of like you kind of figure out what you expect to be true, and then you kind of supply the stuff underneath. You figure out like prime should work this way, and then the proof is just kind of working out what your intuition is showing you. And I kind of approach music composition the same way, where I kind of say like, this is where I want the tunes to go, and then the theory just kind of complements like the overarching broad idea. Which is, I feel like half the time I am reinventing the theory wheel on the fly, because I hear stuff and I'm like, oh, that's why they were doing that. But they kind of come together in sort of in the follow the intuition first, and then let everything else flow from there. The travel is just it puts me in new places and lets me think about the best way to stimulate creativity for me is just to see something different. You see a new landscape, you talk to a person, you experience a new thing, and it triggers something in your mind, and then the music can follow from there. But it's just about getting new ideas in your head.
So you're in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Talk to me a little bit about where you were born and raised.
I grew up in Boston, actually, or just south of Boston. I was born in New Jersey, but I moved out of there when I was about 6 weeks old, so I really don't remember it all that well. But I grew up in about 20 miles south of Boston. I grew up through there, and then I went to college in Maine and grad school in Baltimore, and then spent a year in Wisconsin, and then moved down here about 10 years ago. So I'm still very much learning the area, although I feel like I know it a little better than I did when I moved down a decade ago.
What brought you to that area? What's it like living there?
I like it a lot. It's I came down here for a job. When I graduated from grad school, I applied all over the world. It was in the teeth of the 2008 market collapse, so I applied literally everywhere, and I got, my applications went everywhere from locally to random countries around the world. I think I got a job offer in Albania. But I got an offer at Wofford College, which is where I currently teach, and I got down there, and I really liked it. I liked the atmosphere. I liked their commitment to liberal arts and all those sorts of things. And it was, at the time I was living in Wisconsin, and I came down here, and it was 64 degrees in January, and I was just like, I'm not leaving. This is insane. It won't get this warm where I live in Wisconsin for another 5 months. So that was a good selling point. I really like it. It's Spartanburg and Greenville, South Carolina are kind of one continuous jazz scene. And it's a scene that really there wasn't much of a scene when I got here. And that's been great because we've gotten to really build the scene. There's this group that I helped found called the Greenville Jazz Collective that has really kind of sparked a lot of new music in Greenville, and then also I run a big band called the Spartanburg Jazz Ensemble, and it's grown from kind of a community band to a professional band in the 10 years I've been here. So it's been great. There's been a lot of opportunity for me to do some really cool stuff.
So what do you like best about being a musician?
Oh man, I always said when I was in grad school, I was studying math all day, and I would just play saxophone to stay sane. It was an outlet, but it's something where you can talk to other people in a way that is different from talking to other people. There's something really cool about being able to say something on your instrument, and it doesn't just give you, when you say something with words, you convey the words. When you say something with an instrument, it conveys not just the words, but a feeling and a meaning. And sometimes you can almost make a picture in somebody else's head that's also a picture in your head. And somehow do that without words, and I always find that magical. When I had somebody come up and say, after I play a tune, and they say, "Man, I was picturing blah," and I would say, "Wow, that's exactly what I was picturing." And there's something really magical about that you can convey a picture in somebody else's head without saying a word. I think that to me is the coolest thing.
So, we're obviously in the midst of a global pandemic, and everybody's at home. Jazz musicians aren't playing. So essentially the music has been silent. So my question is this. When we do reemerge and then music starts getting to be dispensed live, what do you hope people learn from this? What kind of appreciation or growth do you hope that the live audiences get from coming back and experiencing this again?
I just hope that people realize how important it is. It's just, sometimes we see music as kind of an ancillary, it's a part of our life. It's not, quote, an important part of our life. It gets kind of put on the shelf. And then when we don't have it, we realize just how much we need it. When everybody is sitting at home, they're realizing how much they care about the arts and entertainment and all these things that we just kind of consider to be ancillary parts of our lives, and we realize they are actually fundamental parts of our lives that, we can. I heard a quote once that somebody said, when we've built the biggest building or built the tallest building and cured all the diseases, there's still always room for somebody who tells a story. And I just feel like that's the most important thing, just realizing how important this is and hopefully supporting it appropriately. But just that realization, that reordering of what we really even care about. Just realizing how important the arts really are to us. I guess that'd be the biggest thing to me.
So why do you love jazz?
I always just loved any music where just anything where you can really just convey yourself. And what I love about jazz is it's the most. Because it's so improvisational. You get exactly a sense of who it is that's talking to you and what they have to say. They can walk in and tell you a story that no one's heard before. And then as I've started to listen more and more, and people have come up, Duke Ellington, but then later on you have, composers who, like Maria Schneider, who will write out whole pieces, and they're whole pieces, but and they're whole kind of classically made pieces, but at the same time you still have that breadth, that ability to within the piece tell about yourself or tell what you're thinking. And I just always thought that was the coolest thing, that you can have something that's so structured and yet so free and so open and so communicative. I think that's what always draws me to jazz.
So what was one of the first live jazz shows that you ever saw where you thought, wow, this is wonderful, I'd love to do this?
Oh, man. I went to a music camp when I was going into ninth grade. And up until that point, most of the jazz I'd ever heard was just either whatever we were playing in the jazz band or like Kenny G on the radio. And it opened my mind I heard all these things that I'd never heard before. And I spent the next year or so just listening to everything. And then I probably, I always think back to the camp concerts that we had there. We had these counselors who would play, and I'm sure they were, I'm sure they're not as good as they are in my memory. But that was the coolest thing to me, just watching these counselors. They were like college students and a little after college students, just playing and just, they'd pick a tune and just go. And that always blew me away. My first jazz show. I remember seeing, oh gosh, they all kind of blur together. I remember seeing a Sonny Rollins one in high school, actually. And it was just such a different, I mean, he has such a presence, and you can just feel it from on stage. You know, I'm way back in the wherever, but you can just feel him talking to you from on stage. So I guess that one.
If you could get into a time machine and go back in time and see anybody, and maybe have a conversation after the show, who would you go see?
Duke Ellington. I would just love to see how that band interacts. I would love to talk to him. I just love to hear him talk. I mean, I love hearing him talk. You know, you listen to his interviews, and he just has such a Duke way of speaking. But I would just love to see how that band interacts. I always, you know, they always said that, you know, there were other players that were better, but nobody sounded better at what they were doing than Duke's players did it. You know, he wrote specifically for them. You know, he'd write, what was it, for Tricky Sam and then the trombone player. He had like 7 notes he would use because they were the ones that sounded best on him. But he just kind of assembled this cast of characters, and I just always wanted to see that cast of characters. I think it would be fascinating to see that.
So everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your coworkers, fans, that you're living your life. Who do you think you are?
Oh, man. That's a big question. I think I live a life it touches in a lot of places and kind of is its own thing, which I think is really great. I think there are you know, I go into school and I teach them math, and then occasionally I'll bring in my saxophone, and it always blows their minds that teachers have another life other than, you know, just sitting around and doing math all day. But I think, I don't know, I'm kind of a free spirit. I think people would see that. I think that's a word that fits for somebody who dabbles in a lot of things and also travels a lot. I'm not somebody who plans into the far distant future. I kind of go with whatever is happening at the time and go with the flow. I don't know. Hopefully they see me as a kind person. But yeah, gosh, that is such a big question. Who am I? I mean, I've spent almost 40 years trying to define that for myself. It's when I figure that out, I'll let you know.
Cool.
But yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you answered it really well. Tom, thank you for taking a minute out to talk about the album. And it's funny because I've had this long enough. I remember getting this album after I got back from Colorado, and you know, I was in mountain mode, so when I saw this album, I was like, "Oh man, this is great!" So,
perfect.
It was cool. It was very cool.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in South Carolina, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Tom for his time, cool, and music. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit Neon Jazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, support all of the arts, keep jazz alive, and enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.